Welcome back, fellow Illumineers, to Be Our Guest. It's time to talk draft. Ravensburger has released official rules for draft and sealed over the weekend, and to help you get ahead of the competition, we've enlisted the help of the magnificent, the masterful, the magnanimous Wero the Great. Both Wero and I are avid drafters and have actually been drafting a homebrew format spearheaded by Knives Nerd Corner and Traverse Tavern over the last couple months. As such, we've got plenty of drafts and games to draw on to help you decide what to pick and when. Note, we'll be starting by covering solely commons and uncommons, as you'll be seeing and picking a lot more of them as they make up at least 75% of the pack. After we've got through all 6 colors, we'll come back with a 7th video compiling the rankings for all the rare, super rare, and legendary cards you can't wait to draft. So, if you want the key to crushing the draft competition at your local game store from 2 seasoned drafters, please be our guest. So, at the end of the video, we're going to have a chart where you can see everything ranked all nice and neat. If you want to just skip to that, by all means. I know some of you like to skip to the end of the books, and that's fine. But the rankings that we're going to go through is we're going to go through S, A, B, C, D, F. And what does that refer to? So, S tier will be first pickable cards, the cards that you want to slam down when you see them first in the pack. A tier will be ideally picks that you're going to get 2 through 4. So they're not necessarily first pickable. You would be satisfied with first picking them, but you want to see them in 2 through 4. B would be picks 5 through 8 where you're happy to see them. C would be cards that you're looking to wheel, but you're still happy to have them in your deck. D would be kind of the last picks, include if you must, hoping not to type thing. And F would be, don't include unless you absolutely have to. You have no other choice. Someone is holding you against your will. All right. We're on to Amber Rare Plus. So this is rares, super rares, and legendaries.
The good stuff.
That's right. The sweet stuff. All right. So Amber, who do we have first here? We've got Ariel, right? Spectacular Singer.
C. There's the likelihood of you drafting enough songs in limited for her to really be worth it.
Yep.
I think is pretty low. And if you don't have songs, she's pretty trash.
Yeah.
So C.
I would agree, and I would even say C with an asterisk of have at least a couple songs. Like first pack, I'm probably not drafting her over much. Subsequent packs, if I've got a couple songs where maybe there's a likelihood, right?
Yeah.
What do we need? So we need the equivalent of about 10 songs in the deck for her to like have a really good chance. Like I'm talking like 70% plus chance of hitting a song. So you need probably a good like 6 or 7 for this to be even remotely viable for that kind of card draw ability, if you were. So at that point, without that, she's really just a 3-cost 2/3 because the Singer 5 is probably not coming into play much if you don't have other songs anyway.
Correct.
All right, who do we got next?
Hades, King of Olympus, is easily F.
Yep.
He is uninkable. You are never going to have enough villains for him to really be worth it. He's basically Scar Shameless Firebrand, but he doesn't ready anything.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, if you happen to have our next card to shift onto a Hades, then maybe he's like passable in the deck, but even then, probably not.
I would still take an Inkwell over him because he is uninkable.
Yeah, no, I agree. F. All right. Hades, Lord of the Underworld. Completely different
S.
for me. Yeah.
S tier.
Yep.
His stats are terrible, but he gets you back something. And that something could be the one bomb you drafted.
Yeah. Really, almost anything. Because if I'm getting a couple bodies, we've mentioned before how many times you run out of cards. Right?
Yeah.
So cards like
card
Maleficent Sorceress and Hades Lord of Underworld that give you a body and something else, and in his case, another body, is huge. And it's the best one out of the options. So you're probably not playing him turn 4. But, you know, even turn probably like, 6 plus, you probably have something in there of substance to get back. Yeah, I like him at S tier as well. Who do we got next?
Next we have Lilo Making a Wish, who I think is high A tier. I don't think there's quite a few rares that you would pick over her.
Yeah.
But in Amber, you've got some nice bodyguard choices. So if you get Protective Cub, who is common, Lilo can stick around and quest for a lot. There was at least one game where I had basically a constructed Amber bodyguard deck, and Lilo just kept questing.
Sure, but now you're thinking of a constructed style deck.
No, but that's the thing, is this Protective Cub is common. If you're an Amber, there's a very high likelihood you get Protective
But I've had
Cub.
times in Amber Steel where I just didn't end up getting past a bunch of bodyguards. So for me, pack 1, she's practically an F. Pack even 2, if I've got like 2 or 3 bodyguards out of pack 1, and certainly pack 3 or 4, if I've gotten a fair amount of bodyguards, then absolutely. Like, then she's a first pick for me. But if I don't, I want nothing to do with her. She's such a big gap for me.
Like, I was saying this with the Ruby Commons, that if Tangle were a 1 ink gain 2 lore, I would absolutely run it. Lilo is that. And she possibly goes for more.
Except for the fact that I was assuming that it was still going to be inkable when we were having that conversation. So I'm not going to hold myself to that conversation.
Again, like limited inkability is just such a...
No, I'm not saying I'm worried about running out of ink options. I'm saying that a Tangle that was 1 cost 2 lore, I would like to have in my deck, but it would also be something that I'd probably ink fairly often. And so I would want the option of being able to ink Lilo, which you can't, right? I'm not worried about her in addition to a bunch of other uninkables leaving me in a position where I've got no ink. I'm just worried that I'm going to have to ink something that I would rather just ink Lilo. Yeah. Maximus Palace Horse.
S tier. 5 is, you are absolutely going to hit 5 in a game unless someone hits you with "You Have Forgotten Me." But outside that, you are absolutely going to hit 5. And Palace Horse is the best Amber bodyguard. Yep. And he's got support. Yes, please.
I think I would almost say that Maximus is one of a couple of reasons to be an Amber, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's not just first pickable. He's like, yeah, he's a really powerful card, but he's so strong that I'm willing to be an Amber because I got a Maximus. I think there's probably 3 cards that I would say fall into that category for me. So I agree on S tier. Who do we got next?
Next we have Moana of Motunui, who I would put in B. So you're in Amber. There are a few princesses in Amber, but trying to run like a tribal deck in Limited is always going to be a little iffy, and her stats are just awful.
Yeah.
1/6. She is 3 lore, which is something, and she is probably going to survive, but she has 1 strength.
Yeah. I would almost factor in, I would have her at B as well, assuming that ability is never going to matter. What I'm counting on is that I'm going to be able to get lore out of her twice, and that I'm going to frustrate my opponent's decision-making for a turn or 2 in the process. And for 5 ink to do that, I'm on board.
Yeah.
All right. Rapunzel, Gifted with Healing.
I think you have to put this into S tier. It's card draw.
Yeah.
Up to 3 cards, which is insane off of the character.
Yep.
You do kind of need to build around her. If you are going to go with her, you need to have stuff at 3 ink or less that has 3, preferably 4 willpower, which those cards do exist.
Yep. She goes real well with the 3/4s.
Yes.
3 cost 3/4s. Yeah, she goes real nicely with those. Yeah, absolutely. But even if you're not playing her on curve, like, she's one I'm willing to sandbag for a few turns. But her with bodyguards, especially the higher cost, especially like Goofy, Maximus if you're really lucky, but Goofy and the like, or the steel bodyguards, so good with them. Yeah, I have her at S tier as well. Don't feel like you need to get 3 cards out of her either to be S tier.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think she's still S tier at 2 cards, and she's A at 1 card. Because the 5 willpower on 2 lore means that, and the fact that she's probably healed something in the process that they're going to want to deal with, means that she's probably going to stick around for at least 2 turns, right? So you're probably getting 4 lore out of her as well. So awesome. Also, cards like this that have such a powerful effect comes into a play effect, but not very much else going on for them. Just psychologically, I don't know if you feel the same way. Players have a tendency to ignore them after the fact.
Yeah.
Because they're like,
It's
they've
just a
done their thing,
1/5.
so I'm kind of wasting my turn going after them. It's like,
Mm.
yes, just ignore her with her 2 lore. All right, who do we have next?
Next, we have Stitch Carefree Surfer, who I think I would put an A. He costs 7, and it's going to be a little harder naturally getting to that in a limited format. And you also need to have 2 things on the board, which there's going to be a lot of challenging. So that often means you don't quest for like a turn or 2 just to make sure your things survive. So then you can drop Stitch Carefree Surfer. If he goes off, he's great. He is a massive body. He draws 2 cards, but he does cost 7.
Yeah.
So A.
So I've still got him at S tier, and it's hard to say I have him at low S tier because S tier, by my own definition, is first pick. But like when we've got multiple rares in a pack, I'm certainly prioritizing him as like the last ones that I have in my S tier. Because of that one fact that you mentioned, I'm not so much against the 7 cost because I think you almost always get to 7 in most limited games and then some. Or at least turn 7, right? You might not keep playing ink to get up to 10 ink, but you'll probably get up to like 6 or 7 ink pretty easily. It's the fact that you got to play around his second ability. In other words, you're probably going to have to hold something back that you would otherwise want to be challenging with or questing with or some other reason.
And that's why I have him in A.
Yeah, and that's fair. Is it that you're still bitter that you picked him over Spirit of Winter? Is that what it is?
No, I won that draft.
I know you did. But I know I could tell very early on that you really wished you'd picked Spirit of Winter. It was funny when you beat the deck that drafted the deck that you wanted to draft.
Yeah, that was funny.
All right. What are we on now? We're on Stitch Rockstar.
S tier. There are
many. I'm opposite with you.
There are so many 1 and 2 drops in Amber. Stitch
but you got them all out by the time you get Stitch out.
You just need like 1.
I think you're much more likely to draw 2 cards off Carefree Surfer than you are off Rockstar.
Because you can shift him out turn 4. You're still going to have a couple cards in hand. And if you've built around him, which you absolutely can, because there's so many cheap things in Amber, absolutely, you can make Rockstar work.
I would say I'm almost opposite him than I am, like, for example, Lilo, which is in pack 1, I'm ranking him a lot higher. In pack 2, when I can still build around him. In pack 3 and 4, when I don't have as much time to build around him, I'm probably valuing him a lot lower. I've got him in A, just because I don't anticipate drawing many cards off him. My hope is that I can draw 1 to 2 cards off of him at best on the turn that he is dry, and then I quest with him, or, you know, heaven forbid, have to challenge with him 1 turn and then he dies. That's kind of what I'm anticipating, which is why I've got him at A, but yeah, he's good. What do we have next?
Just in time. I think I would put this at C.
This isn't just a straight up F for you?
I did okay, there was a draft where I got this and I got Uninvited, and they
just happened to meet each other frequently.
Game. They met each other for me, and so it was turn 3. Here's Uninvited. Go.
Please keep drafting just in time, Wero, so I can win more drafts, please.
So I have it in C. Like, you can make it work in draft. There are
it's going to be so many times you're going to draft this later and it's dead. But don't mislead the people, Wero. You're leading them down.
That's C. It's in C. There are a lot of expensive things that this can get out.
Yeah.
There's a lot of choices for it. It's not an auto F because this can do something. And if it goes off, the best case scenario is it wins you the draft. Sure,
yeah,
it is unique.
Absolutely. If you can get something really impactful, like, again, if you're really lucky and you get a Maximus out with it, or if you're in Sapphire. But the problem that I have is that to make this good, you have to have a fairly critical mass of 5 drops in your deck. And having too many 5 drops in your deck can be really problematic and limited in its own sake.
Well, okay, you're talking about critical mass. Like, this isn't Magic. We have this super generous mulligan roll.
That is a
Um,
fact. We have a much more generous mulligan rule, but I still don't think it's generous enough to warrant this inclusion in your deck when the chances of you drawing a one of in your opening hand.
and that's why I have it in C, because we are apparently approaching these tier lists differently.
All good.
It's not an auto F. There are times where you will want this.
I forgive you. Part of your world. What do you have that at?
B, it's sinkable, it isn't inkable, but it is card advantage, but it doesn't have a body, so it's worse than Hades, but maybe you have a spectacular singer, or you have conned yourself into taking the necklace, which we'll get to. But B.
I've got it at C for the very reason that recursion can be useful. If it wasn't a song, it'd be an F for me. The fact that you can sing it is a C. I just hate with a passion drawing this anywhere before like turn 7. When this is rotting in my hand for so long, because you're not going to want to play this early, because sure, you're maybe getting back a 1-drop or a 2-drop or something. Like, I don't want this till later. So the fact that it's uninkable, so I can't drop it early if I draw it early, makes me really mad. But I still think it's a useful enough effect that it needs to be in the deck. So I got it in C. Next.
The
We just got
Lantern.
a couple of Fs, right? Just like back to back.
Lantern, like I'm having honestly a little trouble placing it, because we were just talking about Sapphire, the Sapphire common. Sapphire is a bunch of ramp stuff in commons that is not as good. But I think since we're talking about Amber, which has this focus on characters, if you are playing the Lantern turn 2, yes, you are skipping playing a character on turn 2, but now you can essentially curve out at 7. Carefree Server becomes a lot more viable.
So I
think having ramp in Amber is better than having ramp in Sapphire for this set.
So part of the problem I have with ramp in Sapphire is because there's that many less cards that are doing anything, because we've got 3 commons and uncommons that just ramp. So you've got access to that many less impactful cards. That's not the case in Amber, so I can make a case for that. I still think it's an F just because I think that it's very hard for you to win by turn like 5 or 6. So your opponent's going to catch up enough that you're going to wish you just had any old 2-drop character instead at some point, is my kind of experience / anticipation. But let me put it this way. It's an F for me that I wouldn't necessarily fault someone for putting in, but I'm going to be pretty happy when I see someone drop it, even turn 2. Can we agree on the necklace, though?
It's an F.
There's still a chance for us to see eye to eye here. We started so strong. We were lined up for like the first 4 picks.
I don't know if I would put it with the Mole Men, because there is that sort of 1 in a million chance where you draft a whole bunch of songs. But F.
Yeah. Even if you're drawing like a lot of songs, like you'd have to have like a third of your deck be songs before you could reliably draw even 2 cards off this. Drawing 1 card off it is not a good thing. You need to draw at least a couple cards off this for this to be remotely palatable. We got first one's Daddy. Is Daddy the first one here?
Yeah.
Daddy Facilier.
Agent Provocateur, or is it Agent Provocateur? I don't know. How French do we need to be here?
Wero.
S tier.
Yeah.
Charlatan's a common. The card advantage this gives you is insane. It's like if my opponent has a board and I have a board and I've quested out and they don't even need the Charlatan out. They just spend 7, they drop Agent Provocateur, they clear my board, all their stuff goes back to hand. I have nothing. So they have 1 character on the board, but they have a full grip. Like, concede.
Yeah, and because there's so little removal in draft, you can effectively just treat him like an enchantment and just keep him in place. Don't exert him, and just soak in the sweet value of just running your stuff repeatedly into, especially stuff that comes into play abilities. Like start running your Maleficent Sorceresses into them. It's like,
Yeah, it's like, oh, I'll play this again. Oh, I'll play this again.
Yeah.
Especially if you can get Pocket Watch.
Yeah, I was gonna say
That
Rush. So
ridiculous.
Rafiki, Pocket Watch. I'd even be happy with Zeus in this deck with this guy.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So sweet, and certainly he makes Doctor Facilier, the smaller one, especially the common uncommon, much more viable.
Mhm.
Right? Yeah. Shifting him out is huge. The 7th turn, you're still happy to have him, but not nearly as much as turn 5.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, Dr. Facilier, Remarkable Gentleman. A little bit different.
If you already have Agent Provocateur, this is an A or S. You need a shift target, or you really want a shift target.
Yep.
If you don't, this is garbage. Maybe not. I would put it D because he doesn't have the worst body.
Yeah. I think this is going to happen more often than like Ana, for example, as like a relative comparable, right? A 3/2/4/1 is relatively comparable to a 4-cost 2/4/2, and I think the ability is going to go off more often. So I rank it above Ana. So I would probably put it at a C, but I'm certainly not happy about it. Like C or D, I think you're happy with. You're is accurate either way. But anyways, by contrast.
Elsa, Spirit of Winter, I would put an A because she is the epitome of a win more card.
What?
No. Okay, here's the thing. If we're in limited, my opponent is like, so there are two instances for this. Either I have a board, I quest out, I drop Elsa, I tap your stuff, you can't do anything, ha ha ha. That's essentially I have an extra turn. But I already need to be ahead.
Not necessarily, because what if you stall out their 2 biggest lore producers and they were going to win, and you're going to win on the following turn?
But like,
right?
Okay,
which I
the
think happens enough. Like, there's how many times have you had
was when what happened to me? What happened to me?
I got fiery for a second there. Go ahead.
Oh my god! What happened to me is I had 2 things on the board. Their board was empty. Here comes Spirit of Winter. Oh yeah, okay, sure. You get an extra turn. You have 1 thing with 3 lore that didn't do much. Like, I'm just saying this, like, it's a win more card. It's good. It is not like S tier.
See, I categorize win more card as you can't really come behind with it. You have to be at least parity or ahead, or it's not useful. Whereas I think this is actually a great come from behind card as well. Because how many games have you been involved in where it's like, if I had 1 more turn, I'd win. If you didn't have, if I could keep you from your 2 highest,
and that's why she's A. I don't think she is S. I don't think you see Elsa Spirit of Winter necessarily. There are better rare picks, I'll say that.
Let me put it this way. I'd probably pay 6 just for her ability. Because of how many times where I'm about to win, but they're going to win 1 turn faster. It's come up so many times for me. I guess you're just always just winning out, so it's not a problem for you. You're just like, la la la.
Well, maybe
no
you
worries.
need to get
Meanwhile,
your
I'm scraping
better,
for the wins, just clawing my way back. I have her at like as a high S tier for me. Like, I'm thrilled to see
A for me.
All right. Moving on, we've got Flotsam Ursula's Spy.
It depends on whether or not you got Jetsam. If you've got a couple of Jetsams in your deck, then he's an A. If you don't, it's D.
Yeah.
This is
I'm glad you said D is the other
Rush.
alternative. Yeah. I agree with Jetsam. He can be, even though they don't come out in order in draft that's not as relevant, you're not likely to find them in order anyway. But if you've got, like Jelin's deck where you've got 4 Jetsam to go with this, or however many, like
which is possible.
Sure. But yeah, he's a D most of the time for me.
Yeah.
His 2 lore does come in handy from time to time. He's not useless. He's just not particularly happy about him. Yeah. What do we have next?
Jafar, Keeper of Secrets, who is a trap card, if I'm being honest.
It's a trap. I'm definitely putting that in.
It's a trap.
Pause for it's a trap.
Don't Admiral Akbar me. But so here's the thing: like, if you get him out on curve, he's got decent enough stats. He's probably better than Wicked Sorcerer, but that's really all he is. he is decent stats for his ink cost. If you top deck him, he's trash. If you try to save cards in hand because you want him to be big, then I am just going to win before you play him.
Yeah.
So I will say B. For if you get him out on curve, he's fine, but he isn't better than that.
See, I've got him as an F, a hard F, because on the like one game, like I don't know the statistics well enough to like quote the actual number, but what's the statistics in even a best of three rounds, so 9 games of actually getting him by turn 4? Probably pretty low, doable. You're definitely going to see him by turn 4 sometimes, right?
Again, generous mulligan.
Yeah,
like
for sure. But
I'm saying this as someone
who
who
be like every even third game that you're going to get him out by turn 4.
Yeah, the mulligan in this game is ridiculous. You just shuck whatever
and
you want.
If you're mulliganing aggressively to get Keeper of Secrets by turn 4, you're doing it wrong.
That is a valid point. That's a valid point.
There you go. Right? So, but the thing is, even when you're getting him out on turn 4, unless you've been like super lucky getting all the Maleficents and all the friends on the other side, he's probably like 3 strength by the time you actually go to use him the next turn, the following turn.
Which
right?
a 3/5/2 lore for 4 is above average.
That's the best case scenario I have for him, though.
I know, that's why he's
If that's
B.
the best case scenario for him, being slightly above average in his best case scenario, in his worst case scenario, he's a 0 strength, right? Because worst case scenario, which is probably more frequent than his best case scenario by far, is you're drawing him later, and you've either emptied your hand or you've got 1 card in hand. So maybe challenging, he's a 1 strength because you're going to hold that 1 card before you play it. But you're not just want to hold it on your opponent's turn, so you're going to play that card and then he's 0 strength. Yeah, I think he's a big trap. I think if someone else plays him, I'm thrilled to see him. And yeah, I'm probably going to be the guy that he gets played out on turn 4 where they've dropped Maleficent and then sang Friends on the other side turn 4 and then played him. That's probably going to be my experience, but that's not going to change my opinion that you should not play.
And it the color that gets Friends on the other side, B. Like,
again,
yeah,
I'm
not going to sing his praises.
To put him in.
I'm not going to say slam him pack 1, but I think he's fine.
Okay, so I know we're just going to disagree on this next one because we disagreed on Lilo, but
yeah. So Maleficent biding her time. So in Amethyst, you don't have the luxury of bodyguards.
Yes,
but she is 2 lords, so I think B.
So I think Lilo I had at C, so I've got Maleficent at D because of the lack of bodyguards. Yeah, 1 uninkable for 2 lore is not where I want to be. Marshmallow, Persistent Guardian.
So
Big
A or S?
Very high
A or
gap
S?
between constructed and limited for this one, for sure.
Yes. You will never see him in constructed. In limited, he wins games because he just pops back to your hand. You play him again.
Yep.
You just keep playing him, and your hand gets bigger and bigger because you just keep playing the same card there over and over again.
He works really well with Keeper of Secrets, by the way.
He does.
Because you've got something else to be playing, and you can just, like you said, just keep building up your hand with other cards while you keep playing Marshmallow. Yeah, I've got him at S tier. Yeah. Who do we have next?
Next is the Queen. No, Mickey Mouse, Wayward Sorcerer.
I've got him at Sinister
get
Visitor.
Some brooms.
Sinister Visitor level is my.
Yeah, I think Sinister Visitor level I put as B. I think Mickey is a Sinister Visitor if you don't have brooms, so he's a B. He's fine. If you do have a broom or 2 or 3, he's an A.
Yeah, I could go with that. I would say I want to have 2 brooms before I pick him higher than B, but yeah, definitely the more brooms you got, and don't put a bunch of brooms in your deck even if you've got Mickey. Put like 2, maybe 3 if you've got Mickey. But yeah, he varies a little bit for me. But I've got him at B, and I think most of the time I'm going to be happy to pick him up at B and leave it at that, regardless of brooms, just because he's a Sinister Visitor with slight upside.
Yeah.
And I say slight only based on probability. Again, like he's very good upside when they're both in play, but he's slight upside in terms of what I'm actually expecting to get out of him. Yeah, the Queen, Wicked and Vain, though.
A.
Yeah.
She's not an auto slam for me because you're not going to get any lore out of her.
Yep.
And she is going to just draw challenges. But the mirror costs 4, magic mirror costs 4, beast mirror costs 3. This is free. You can do this every turn.
Yep. She obviously, so I think a very high A, like I'm looking to get her second pick, but I'd also be very thrilled to have her first pick as well. I shouldn't say very thrilled, reasonably thrilled to have her first pick, especially if I'm in Amber or Steel and I can throw her behind some bodyguards. Then it's just like, oh, so good. All right. Next we have my most disappointing card of the set. I just had very high expectations.
I think the subtitle is hinting that she's gonna be doing stuff in the next set, but she does draw a card. She does make you lose a lore.
Yep.
She's got decent stats. She's uninkable and she costs 7. So I would say low A, high B for her.
Yep. I would say I'd even stick in A just because that 8 willpower, because the uninkable isn't as relevant for her. It still is. I always want the flexibility. Even my bombs, if I had the choice to ink them, at least give me that choice. But I don't think it's as relevant for her. And the 8 willpower, 3 lore means I'm probably almost certainly getting 6 lore out of her. Net 7 with the one that they lost, undraw a card. But I had such high hopes for her. And don't get my hopes up for the second chapter, man. Don't do that to me.
Well, what's with the seaweed? It's gotta be Ursula.
All right, Zeus, God of Lightning.
A. Full A. I did a draft where I got 4 Zeuses.
How did you get 4 Zeuses in a draft?
Because they kept getting passed to me. Like, no one wanted Zeus. And I was like, I'll take Zeus. Zeus is great.
I've got him at a B just because, for me, he's so hard to come back with. Like, you can't catch up with him. He feels like a win more card to me. In that, if you're behind, it's really hard to catch up with him, because catching up, you really start needing to hit those 2-for-1s. And, you know, if I'm going into a 2 or 3 willpower character with him, then he's just dying on the next turn. So I really need to just use him as 1-for-1, taking out a 4 willpower character, and I don't love it. So he's great when you're ahead because you can look for those 2-for-1s. You can maybe clear the board and he sticks around. You could get 2-4 lore out of him.
But also, like, let's say your opponent has one thing on the board and has just gotten rid of your one character, comes back to your turn, out here comes Zeus, smash, and he gets to stick around.
If he sticks around, like I was saying, so if you're at parity or ahead, such that you can relatively clear their board or clear their board of anything.
No, what I'm saying is, like, he can get you ahead because he has rush.
If you're at parity, I'm saying if you're behind.
No, you don't even need parity. Let's say they have one character, you have nothing.
Sure. So I'm thinking of parity as being like 2 to 3 to 4 characters on each side of the board staring at each other, right? Parity at 0 is just like a top deck away, right? So.
Well, like, but it isn't parity because they have something and you don't.
That's fair. That's a fair point, and I can step back from that and say when I'm thinking behind, I'm thinking like, okay, I'm gonna lose in like 2 to 3 turns. I need to like catch up here. And anytime I've drawn him in that situation, he's just felt miserable for me. But I still think he's like a relatively high pick. I would just have him as like a high B than an A.
I think he's an
A. Okay, we got a couple that I think we're both gonna relatively agree on, give or take a little bit. What do we got next?
Magic Mirror, I think would be like a high B for me. Not a first pick, but you're gonna get a lot of value out of it in a draft setting. Yeah,
I think to your point earlier about Beast Mirror, you're very likely to empty your hand in draft, so I don't think the empty hand bit is going to come up all that often. And so the 3 cost makes a big difference. It's amazing how much 1 ink can do. It's the difference between usually being able to draw and play that card with Beast Mirror than just draw it with Magic Mirror. So I'd agree.
So you probably saw in my last draft video, there was a game where, like, a lot of times there was, okay, I exert Magic Mirror, I draw a card, pass. because that's all you can do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is still great. Don't get us wrong.
Mm.
But yeah, I agree. Is in the B range. White Rabbit's Pocket Watch.
S plus 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 plus, like that scene from A Christmas Story where he's like having the fever dream of the grading having A plus plus.
Oh
like
yeah,
that
I
is
love that.
Pocket
As
Watch.
she's going across the chalkboard.
Yeah. This just breaks. This wins drafts. This is ridiculous. Pair this with Snow Queen. It's
Paired with Snow Queen,
ridiculous
and
thing
you've
to
got
do.
like stasis. If anyone's old school Magic and remembers stasis, like you're locking them out. Like they have no hope if you've got those two out and you've got any sort of presence to back them up. Yeah. When most of your deck is characters, and getting those favorable trades makes such a big difference. White Rabbit's Pocket Watch. I don't know if I've got it at plus 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 plus, but I've definitely got it as first pickable.
So, like, usually you can safely quest and assume that if there's nothing on the board right now that can get rid of it, you're fine.
Yeah.
But then, here's a Rafiki. But like with the Pocket Watch, it's anything, absolutely anything hops out, has rush, immediately kills.
Yeah. Yep. It's so good. Do not sleep on it at all. This is one of those we talked about, kind of incremental value out of items. So you're not necessarily getting like a very overt card advantage, but it is absolutely giving you card advantage because you're getting favorable trades every single time.
Yeah.
Yep. So good. Awesome. All right, let's get it rolling.
Rolling. Oh, my butt is swollen.
Do I have your permission to include that on the video?
Go for it. Okay.
All right, we're talking about Emerald Rare Plus. So we're starting.
Speaking of no shame, Emerald.
Yeah. Beast Wolfsbane is the first one, I believe.
Yeah, it is. Beast Wolfsbane. I don't know if I would first pick it unless there was nothing better. I mean, that's kind of tautological, but yeah, Beast Wolfsbane is good. It's got rush. Again, uninkable doesn't really matter too much in draft. It's got 2 lore. I said this when it came out. The second ability almost never matters.
Yeah, just pretend it's not there.
Yeah, but still, he's a 5
better
cost 4
Flotsam.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, he is. In draft, he is better Flotsam.
Yeah, exactly. I've got him at A as well. I think I'm more than happy to pick him up early, but I'm not looking necessarily to pick him up outside of or in that first pick. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cruella de Vil, Miserable as Usual.
Yeah, I think I put her in C. Even in Constructed, I don't always feel the best running her.
Yeah.
The bounce effect is not as good as it is on others because your opponent gets to choose when it happens.
Yep.
And she's only got 1 lore, so she's pretty easy to ignore.
Yeah.
And her stats are pretty miserable.
Yeah, I think that the biggest difference for her between draft and constructed is in constructed, you're more likely to want to play a 2-drop into a 3-drop into a 4-drop, 5-drop, 6-drop, etc. You've built your deck around that curve. Whereas when we're drafting predominantly commons and uncommons, we're going to be more low to the ground, more go wide strategies. And so her ability isn't as impactful because chances are you're bouncing a fellow 2-drop or a 3-drop, or maybe if you're lucky a 4-drop. And your opponent's just not as threatened by that. So it's not like she's going to stick around for 5-6 turns because your opponent doesn't want you bouncing their 6-drop. She's going to get taken out. You'll bounce something inconsequential and be sad for it. So I've got her at B only, again, out of kind of lack of 2-drops. And I do want to try and have some 2-drops in there. There are better ones, but I'm certainly not upset having her in the deck.
Yeah.
Who do we got next?
Next, we have Genie on the Job, who is another S tier. Honestly, if I see him pack 3, I consider pivoting to Emerald. He's just so good.
Yeah. We talked about ones to be in a color 4.
Yeah.
This is like high S tier for me. Like, I'm picking this over certainly half of the legendaries, if not more so.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's awesome. I can't really even think of any downside to him, right? The uninkable we've already established isn't nearly as significant. There still isn't an evasive that's got 4 strength. I mean, I'm not counting Peter Pan with the Tinkerbell thing. Please don't come at me in the comments for that.
No,
That's
there's
not going to happen.
Tigger. Tigger exists.
Oh, Tigger, you're right. Yeah. Tigger's
Don't
got
forget
4 power.
Tigger.
You're right. I often forget Tigger just because I don't like drafting him nearly as much, but you're absolutely right. There is a niche one that will get you. I'd say niche. I mean, obviously, it's going to be prevalent in that color, but niche because it's only in one color. So, yeah, there's just really no downside to him. You're thrilled to get him, and if you can find any way to recur him, like if for some reason you find yourself an Amber Emerald and you can bring him back, assuming he does in the first place, which might be a stretch.
Yeah, see, once he hops on the board, like you've essentially swung the game in your favor so much, it'll be very difficult for your opponent to come back.
Yeah. Conversely, I'm not a huge fan of Genie Powers Unleashed in draft.
Yeah, because in draft you're not going to have as many actions, so his last ability doesn't matter as much. He costs 8. He's like an ever so slight upgrade over on the job. I suppose you could shift him onto on the job, but then you're not really getting much out of that.
No.
You're getting 1 more lore and 1 more willpower.
At the cost
At that point, I would rather have a second body than shift.
For sure. Now, obviously, there's an asterisk there if you happen to draft a lot of the 2-3. And as opposed to some where you don't want to be drafting the shift target if it's not good. In this case, the 2-3 is very good in draft.
Yeah, it is.
So, if you wind up with 3 or 4 of them, then sure, all of a sudden Genie Powers Unleashed becomes a lot better. How do you have them? So ignoring the 2-3 for a second, let's say you only draft one of them or don't draft any of them, right? Where do you rank Genie Powers Unleashed on its own merits?
On its own merit, this is the same category as King of Olympus. Like, I can't fit this in.
Yep.
It's just not impactful enough for 8.
Yeah, so you've got it like a D or an F on its own merits?
I would put it above King of Olympus just because it has evasive.
Yeah, fair. Yep.
And it's guaranteed the lore.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. I had it at a C in that, and I think that's probably being generous. I think C to D is probably where you need to put this in. I wouldn't even probably draft it like first pick, pack 3, let's say, if I've already gotten 2 or 3 of the 2-3, and I keep forgetting his name. Can you help me?
The ever impressive.
Thank you. I should just remember because it's a very ironic name for something that is not terribly impressive.
His art is impressive.
I mean, he's impressive relative to his cost, but not as a card in general. Anyways, so I would probably still only put him as like a B to A if I've got a bunch of the ever impressive. But yeah, certainly on his own. Who's next?
Next is Hans, Scheming Prince, who I think I would put high B, low A. He's 3 lore. That's I think he is the cheapest 3 lore character you can get.
Yeah. I don't think there's any 3 costs that are 3 lore, so yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, he's another one that you got to have an asterisk on because I think it's so dependent upon, do you have something to keep him alive? Either removal to clear the way, bodyguards for him to hide behind, some way to keep him alive. The Elsa Pocket Watch combo, some way to keep him alive so that, the first time he quests, he's not just eliminated easily. If you can do that. So first pack, I would be fine with taking him first pick if there isn't a decent option, but I'm not happy about it. I've got him as an A, but again, kind of with an asterisk. Like,
Yeah.
I really want to look for some way in my deck to keep him alive. But he's the type of card that I think, as opposed to other cards where I'm like, well, it's not good if you need another card to make it good. He is good enough that I think you would want to kind of shape your deck around him a little bit.
Yeah, I think if you get Hans in your first pack, that
Yeah.
would kind of encourage you to do either Emerald Amber or Emerald Steel to
Yep.
get the bodyguards.
Yep. Or I'd be even fine with Ruby if you can, like, you grab a couple Dragonfire or something like that, right? Just things to clear the way. Like, presumably, I mean, if you get him off on curve, then there's probably things around still that can take care of him. But what I'm less worried about is trading. Like, obviously, I don't want him to just trade. But if I get 3 lore out of him and then trade with another 3/3, even if it's a 3 cost or something, I'm not, like, crushed at that. What I'm really worried about is a 4/4, is a Queen Regent, Elsa, taking him out for free, effectively. So. Iago Loudmouthed Parrot. How are you feeling about Iago?
How I feel about Iago is a conditional B. I think the same sort of deal with Scheming Prince. If you are also in colors that have bodyguards, he's going to be exceptional.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the bodyguards, he's just going to die.
That's a fair point. Yeah. Yeah, see, the where I differentiate is, as opposed to Scheming Prince, where you could do removal or bodyguards to get him through. Obviously, removal is not really helping you with Iago, because presumably you're not using removal on the card that you've given Reckless. So the character with Reckless is still around. So unless it's a 1/1 or a 2/2 or something, then Iago, you know, him still being able to attack Iago is not necessarily, or challenge Iago, is not necessarily ideal. So I specifically want to partner him with bodyguards. But if I can get that off, yeah, I'm happy with him. So that's why I've got him at a C, because I think just the flexibility is less with him. For him to be most effective, he needs to be partnered with Amber. That being said, he's not ineffective just of his own merits, because he's effectively Reckless is effectively they can't quest for a turn, which there are plenty of times, and we've talked about this in previous videos, there's plenty of times where I just need one more turn. I just need you to not be at 21 lore. Like, let me hold back one of your 2 lore generators and I can win on the next turn. So there's going to be enough times where it's not an ideal use of his abilities, but just keeping them from questing for a turn, their 2 or 3 lore generator, could be enough for his cost.
But comparing him to Jasper Common Crook, it depends on what your game plan is. If you're just trying to stall, you would rather have Jasper, because he quests at the same time, he has a higher strength, and he's uncommon. Whereas Iago, your game plan needs to be, you need to make use of that Reckless. You need to make use of the fact that the character being made Reckless is swinging in, is going to be exerted on the next turn if they survive, and you need to be capitalizing on that. If your deck can't capitalize on that, you should be taking Jasper instead.
Yeah. And, you know, to be fair, I'm pretty sure in most situations I'd rather have Jasper, just because of the nature of the way that I play. But I'm still not adverse to having Iago in my deck. You know, I'm still taking him in a spot where I'm happy to have him in my deck. I'm just not happy to draft him early.
Yeah.
All right, who do we got next?
Next, we have John Silver, Alien Pirate. The card I am most happy exists in this set. I think I got to put him at S. Like, he does cost 6, but again, you're pretty naturally going to get to 6 over the course of the game. But he does something as soon as you play him, and every time he quests. He quests for 2 lore. He's got a decent body for his cost, and you're just going to get so much value out of him.
That simple addition of making it also it comes into playability is, I think, the thing that puts him over the top and into S tier.
And it is the fact that John Silver does what he does actually makes Iago better, because if you're facing a John Silver, you'd rather have Iago than Jasper, because Iago is an exert ability, Jasper is a quest ability.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a relatively niche scenario where they've got, you know, what's John Silver, is super rare and
legendary.
Is he a legendary? Oh yeah, he is too.
He is legendary.
Anyways, regardless, you're not seeing him very often, and you've got to be in the mirror match, and you've got to have the decision between those two characters. But that's relevant, right? That's going to come up, just not very often.
But like going to Constructed for a second, I've been seeing on the Less Than Legal potentially platform a lot of matchups where I've been doing this Emerald kind of recklessy kind of deck where I've got John Silver, I've got Jaspers, and I'm going up against other decks that have the same cards in them.
Yeah.
And I'm almost kind of wishing I had Iago because I could still do that because he's not questing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how often do you think you're going to be in the mirror match and have that exact kind of
Depends on how popular the deck is.
For sure, but someone's still got to open them. I'm just talking about draft here, right? It's Constructed for sure. I'm with you on Constructed. Regardless, I mean, I think he's an S. We're just kind of quabbling over how much of an S he is.
He's great.
Take him first and be happy. Yeah. Next, we've got Cusco, Temperamental Emperor, which I also have an S, but a less enthusiastic S for me.
I have a pretty similar level of enthusiasm. He's got 3 lore. He's got ward.
Yep.
You ignore Elsa shenanigans. You ignore Dragonfire. You ignore Let It Go.
Yep.
All of the standard removal. The only standard removal he doesn't get around is Be Prepared. Because Grab Your Sword, it's highly unlikely your opponent's going to get 2 of those.
Yeah.
So the only thing getting rid of him is Be Prepared. So you're guaranteed... Not only are you guaranteed 3 lore, you're guaranteed to get rid of something your opponent has.
Yeah. I mean, I'd give him the same treatment as Hans, which is, build around him. If you crack him open, pack 1 or 2, shift your design of your deck to help him out. Because if you can have him surviving a turn or 2, because there's very little ways, because removal's so limited. If we eliminate the fact that they can't even touch him with removal, even if they've got it, then the likelihood of them being able to do much about clearing the way for him, right? Because if you've got a bodyguard in front of him and they remove it, then, they can deal with Cusco. But when removal's so low at hand, so hard to come by, the likelihood of that goes down. So they've got to force their way with challenges through the bodyguard to get to Cusco. So if you can throw things in their path, he can be so effective.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Yeah. At the end of the day, again, 3 lore is so huge that if I just get 3 lore out of him and force 2 of my opponent's characters to deal with him, I'm happy. It's when, again, they've got a 4/4 or gosh, even worse, a 4/3 Horus or something like that swings into him, that I'm less happy about that. So I do need to build him around him a little bit. So it's, maybe you could call it a build around S, but I think it's just so much going on for it that you got to give it a try.
Yeah.
And if you don't pick it first, you're never going to get it.
Oh yeah, this is not wheeling.
Yeah. Who's
By
next?
contrast, Lady Tremaine, Wicked Stepmother, will absolutely wheel because there aren't enough actions in draft, and her stats are awful. I remember way back when she was a Facebook reveal, and like, how much lore does she have?
She's got to be 2, right? There's no
gotta
way
be
she's
2
not
lore.
2.
Like, nope, she's 1 lore. How? I don't understand.
I remember
is
the
she
day
only
that they
1 lore?
clarified on Twitter, and everyone's like, "What?
What?
Are you high? That can't be possible. 1 lore. Get out of here."
Like, you compare her to like Rapunzel gifted with healing. It's like, what are you people smoking?
Yeah.
This is
Like, what was the boogeyman? It must be that they were anticipating future sets, right? Like, it must be they were working on 2 or 3 sets simultaneously, and they're like, yeah, she's not going to be broken in this set, but wait till we got the group working on set 3, and they're going to bust her wide open, so you got to neuter her a little bit. Maybe.
I mean, even in this set, there's a whole new world. Maybe you could do an argument for like some sort of removal.
Grab your sword or something, but still.
Yeah.
F.
Yeah.
Hard F.
Right into F. Hard pass.
Mickey Mouse Artful Rogue. Where are you at on Mickey Mouse?
C to D. Like again, you're not getting too many actions.
Yep.
And it is pretty likely you'll get a Steamboat Pilot in your deck, so you will probably be able to shift him.
Sure. But how thrilled are you to pay 5 to shift the 6/5 on there? It's not bad.
Yeah.
So I probably wouldn't have it at a D. I would have it at an asterisk, C, with a couple of Steamboat Pilots, because I'm not thrilled about it. I hate 2-for-1ing myself. So even if it's a good cost, paying 5 for 6/5 2 lore, of course you do that any of the day of the week, but you're paying 2 cards and 5 cost, right? And yeah, the action piece is going to come up so infrequently. It'll come up, obviously. You're going to have some actions, but whether you even draw them in time to make this useful.
Exactly.
So yeah, D to F if you don't, for some reason, you can't find some Steamboat Pilots, or you're not in another color with some Mickeys. What do you think is kind of the magic number to actually want him in the deck? 3 Mickey?
So as far as like shift targets, like you'll probably eventually get to 7 ink. I think what you should be more worried about is actions in your deck. If you have been drafting a whole bunch of actions for some reason, then you start looking at this card a little more. Because again, Steamboat Pilot is a common. You're very likely there's a Mickey in literally every color.
Yeah,
you're
but is
gonna
that
have
Mickey
a shift target.
Like, for example, I wouldn't want to shift True Friend on this because I just like I'd rather keep the card and have the 3/3/2 lore than spend a second card for 6/5/2 lore. Mickey Mouse Detective I don't want to play. Let's see. Amethyst, super rare. Probably not shifting on top of that. What else?
Depends. So you're still getting a stats upgrade over Wayward Sorcerer, and how many brooms you're going to get. I'm like, this is just devil's advocating at this point.
Sure.
Like, so again, I think you should be looking more at how many actions are you drafting, and it's not going to be that many.
Yeah. And also, I wouldn't want an action-heavy deck in draft, because you're not getting a ton of value out of those typically. I mean, obviously, friends on the other side or something like that, sure, grab your sword. But I don't want a lot of the 1-2 cost actions in my deck in draft.
Yeah.
So I would say most of the time it's a D to F, but you can certainly build around it. Just be careful. What about Mother Gothel, Selfish Manipulator?
So I would say in draft, high B, low A. I was really keen on her for a while, but after trying her and construct a little bit, the fact that she does nothing the turn she comes out, you need to then have her survive a turn and quest. I've honestly dropped her from my Emerald decks. John Silver just does what she does so much better. And if you actually get her out and exerted behind a bodyguard, she's fantastic, but you need to get there, which is the trouble in constructed. In draft, it's going to be a lot easier to get there. And if you can hide her behind a bodyguard, your opponent just can't do anything. So if you are in the bodyguard colors, like the same sort of rationale that we've talked about for a few of these other ones, grab her. If you aren't, then don't prioritize her, but she's still good.
This one you almost have to. Like, the others are better with bodyguard, but Mother Gothel you almost have to, because they're going to want to challenge a 3/6/2 lore anyway, because she's a pretty easy, quote unquote, card to get rid of once we're at turn 6+, right? She's relatively easy to clear away, so they'd want to challenge her anyway. Once they're done removing her from the board, they can go back to questing delightfully on the same turn, right?
Exactly.
Her powers do not affect the board from the grave, from the banished pile, right? So I think she necessitates clearing the way, right? You need to basically ensure your opponents can't get at least 5, more than 5 rather, 6+ strength against her the turn that she exerts. You need at least 2 turns out of her for her to be effective. For her to be worth the cost. So I'd agree. B. I'm happy with that. What do we got next?
Next, we have Do It Again. If you thought Lady Tremaine was bad, this is bad too.
Yeah.
Again, you're not going to get enough actions for this to really do much. If you have drafted like some bomb actions, like you've gotten like a couple Dragonfires or something, then maybe you think about it.
Yeah.
But you will run into the case where you draw this before you draw those actions.
And you can't ink
And
it. So
if you thought Captain of the Jolly Roger was bad and you haven't drawn your cannons yet, this is worse. So
yeah.
avoid this. This will wheel. This will absolutely wheel. So if you are making the kind of deck that wants one of these, you can absolutely wait on it.
I don't even think you should be making the deck that wants one of these. I think it's an F. Because even if you've got one or two actions in your deck that would be considered bombs and worth paying 3 to get back, as you said, what's the statistical likelihood that you're going to draw that action, play it first, and then have this in order and in a timing that you wouldn't just rather have this as any inkable card?
So I'd agree. This is an F.
Yeah.
This almost deserves the Mole Man.
We won't go Mole Man for that one, but I do have a candidate for Mole Man. Steal from the Rich. Is that subterranean?
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
If you get a whole bunch of evasives and there's a whole bunch of common evasives.
Yep.
And to the point where you can almost make a constructed deck out of Emerald and Ruby evasives. If you're in that kind of deck, then you can pretty easily get a whole bunch of stuff on the board and you can set your opponent back a lot with this. So there are going to be times where you're like, my opponent could quest for the win on their turn, and I need to challenge into them. But if I quest this turn, I would be able to win on my next turn, but I need to deal with my opponent. With Steal from the Rich, you don't need to worry about that. Like, I'll quest. You are no longer within reach of win con. So I think Steal from the Rich is, depending on the kind of deck you're running.
Yeah.
If you don't have the kind of deck that you can guarantee will stick around on the board, this is easily F. If you are drafting the kind of deck that will stick around, I would put this probably by your scale. So not a first pick, not something you slam, but if you are building the kind of deck where this will shine, you want to grab this.
Let me counter that with, if you build the kind of deck where this will truly be worth including, if you don't draw it, you're going to get decimated. So don't build the deck that this would, because you're talking about evasives, but evasives are high cost, right? So for me, I'd want to get like 5 lore out of this to warrant putting in the deck. Not that I would expect to get that, but to put a 5 cost on Inkable that does nothing otherwise, I would want to be able to relatively reliably, I'm not even counting that I get this off every game, but relatively reliably get like 4 lore or 5 lore back from it. And the number of times where your characters, even evasives, stay on the board long enough to have that many characters out questing at once, you probably either already won. You want to talk about win more. You probably either already won or there's something else at play, right? Most of the time, if that's the situation, you've already won. Especially the evasives when so many of them are 2 lore, right? If you got 4 out that you're questing with on the same turn, so you've quested with a few before then, you've already won. Yeah, and then there's the times where you need to ink your Pongo or your Goofy because you got this stuck in your hand. So what this deck actually needs is a extremely cheap go wide strategy. And if you just do, like, if you cap it like 4 cost as the top of your curve, you're going to get decimated. I think draft needs an early game more so than a lot of people give it credit for, but not exclusively. Yeah. So I just think the best case scenario for this is fundamentally destroying your deck building process. And so I think it's subterranean level because I don't want to build around this. As opposed to the other cards that we want to build around, they're still useful without that build around coming to fruition, and they don't require a hardcore build around. This requires a hardcore build around, and if it doesn't come to fruition, this is utter trash.
And because it is a build around, it will wheel. It will come back to you, and so you can grab it if you're building that kind of deck.
But I think you're making your deck worse by including it.
I don't think so. I think, like, again, like, uninkables are not as much of a big deal in draft because you're not going to be grabbing that many.
No, I agree, but even having a few, I'm not saying that my hand's going to have, again, 4 or 5 uninkables in it, and I have nothing. I'm saying this is the card I would want to ink more than anything, and I can't. Right? If I draw this late game, and I happen to have 4 characters out, then I obviously wouldn't care about inking it, right? If I'm in top deck mode, right, and I just need to survive a turn. But that's just trumps utterly drawing this anytime before like turn 7, and you're like, gosh, I wish I could ink this so bad. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll leave it at that contentious. Feel free, add us in the comments. Let us know what side of the Steal the Rich debate you're on, because I'm at Subterranean. I'm at your deck is patently worse for having this in it. All right. All right. Let's do some Ruby Rare Plus. What do we got first, sir?
First off, we have Aladdin Heroic Outlaw, who honestly slam dunk S tier. His attack is just so good. Stealing that lore, yes, please give me that lore. And you have Street Rat as a possible shift target. There is an Aladdin in Emerald who is a great shift target. There is an Aladdin in Steel who I guess exists, but you're pretty much guaranteed to be able to get a shift target for him. If I see this pack 1, I am very likely to grab it.
Okay, let me just remind you, though, that we had every single Aladdin, common, uncommon Aladdin, as utter garbage. So you're saying there's shift targets, but there's shift targets that are making your deck worse by
But
being
that's the thing. If I see this pack 1,
Sure,
I'm grabbing
yes.
Heroic Outlaw, and I am taking Aladdin's because I have the shift targets now.
I think we did mention that, and if we didn't, we'll backtrack here and say, obviously, if you got Heroic Outlaw, the other Aladdins go up a little bit in rankings. You want them in the deck. I've got him
at 7. I would run this at 7.
Yeah, for sure. But that's why I've got it
7.
as an A, is because I'm actually more interested in just running this as a 7. His ability, any ability that's on challenge, is so much better with shift because you can surprise your opponent with it. But they're not going to not quest/challenge at that point in the game. They have to. And if they're not, if Heroic Outlaw is holding them back from doing those things, then he's doing his job as well. So I've got him in
and that's kind of the thing. I think I almost want to reevaluate those Aladdins we've already gone over, because putting them one on the board, either if it's Street Rat or if it's one of the other two, and you've already shown you have Ruby as your second color.
Yep.
Them being on the board and you're at 5 ink is going to completely change how the other person plays, because they're going to be thinking, what if they have Heroic
You're
Outlaw?
playing the bluff game with Aladdin? It's like, do I or don't I have Heroic Outlaw?
Exactly. And he's like, it's possible. And so you got to like, and I think you can kind of psych your opponent out a little bit. Sorry,
don't discount that in any game, the ability to psych your opponent out about what you've got in hand. I don't know if that makes me slightly more interested in them, but I don't even think that makes me a grade higher interested in any of them. I will say, to your point, if you take Heroic Outlaw pack 1 or 2, prioritize the Aladdins a little bit more. In other words, have them in your deck, but don't have a ton of them. And obviously, if you're taking him pack 3 or 4, hopefully you haven't been prioritizing Aladdin's on the off chance that you cracked Heroic Outlaw. Again, like, he's a high A for me. Like, I'm hoping to get him second pick type thing, but I'm hoping that the person to beside me cracked an even better card, because there are, like, I think you can agree, there are much better. Like, there's probably at least a handful of significantly better cards in the set. So it's not unheard of to think that you might get him second pick, right? So that's where I'm happy, is getting him second. I will take him first, but I'm happy getting him second. Captain Hook, Ruthless Pirate.
Dump him with the Mullen. Like, what is this card? This 7 uninkable, and then the whole conceit of the second ability. If your opponent has a bunch of evasives, the rush on this doesn't matter, because he doesn't have evasive. He can't swing into them. So they need to have evasives and then one token character that is exerted and doesn't have evasive.
Yeah.
why does this card exist? I would love to have more anti-evasive like tech. This is not it.
This is not good anti-evasive tech, that's for sure. I'm still waiting for the rush character that has at least evasive on your turn. We really need one of those, assuming they don't cost it ridiculously. Yeah, I mean, I had it at D because at the end of the day, if I end up being forced to include a 7-cost 5/5 rush in my deck, it's not the end of the world, but I'm assuming that the second ability doesn't exist. Yeah. Who do we got next, sir?
Next, we have LeFou Instigator. I'm going to put him at an A.
Yep.
Ruby has a bunch of unchallenged stuff. You've also got Maui Hero to All. There's a whole bunch of stuff that LeFou can do. And it's not just getting in a second challenge. It's also, ooh, I'm ready now, so you can't attack me back.
Yeah.
Like, there's just so much.
With your don't discount also your, obviously I'm not saying this to you, to our audience, don't discount with your, if you're like Ruby Emerald and your 3 lore stuff, or really any color that's got a 3 lore that's vulnerable, don't discount, just readying them for the purpose of them not dying that turn.
Exactly.
And being able to exert them, to quest with them again the next turn. Like, he is a great tool for, and we'd already talked about this with Fan the Flames, right? Like, that ability is great for multiple reasons, right? To potentially quest and challenge in the same turn, challenge twice if you got a big body, and keep your thing alive if that's what you need, right? So all in all, agree. The hardest part for me about this card is, why is there a LeFou that's better than the Gaston in this set?
Okay, what I don't get is why there's 2 LeFous and 1 Gaston.
That too.
That is
whichever way you want to slice it. Like, could this not have been a Gaston, a rare Gaston, instead of LeFou?
I like the idea that it's LeFou leading the mob. I wish he was a villain and not an ally.
Yeah, that too. All right. Maleficent Monstrous Dragon. Are we getting to 9 ink?
Yeah, so that's the thing. If I see Monstrous Dragon first pack as my legendary, I look at the rest of the pack, and if I see Sapphire ramp tools, I pick Maleficent. And I'm just like, I will ramp on the offest of chances that I get Maleficent and I don't accidentally ink her. If I don't have that, then the worst case scenario, she's ink. She is inkable. If you can get to 9, which is not unheard of, if you're paired with Sapphire, you're paired with Amethyst, even Steel, and you get Beast's Mirror. Like, Beast's Mirror really incentivizes inking. There is a possibility you get to her. I would put her at a low A, maybe a high B. She is a build around. You do need to structure your deck so you actually get to 9 ink. But if you get her out, like, she will probably win you the game.
So I'm torn on her because she's such a great impact, right? But I've had her played against me, and although it has been great, it hasn't been like soul destroying. I've lost the game, right? Which, for that cost, I would kind of want something that just lays waste to my opponent. I don't know, but she is so good, and the fact that she's a really good body with an amazing effect. And she's inkable, so, you know, worst comes to worst, if you draw her in your opening hand or turn 2 or something, you're like, I don't have much ramp in my deck, am I even getting to her? Yeah, just ink her and it's not the end of the world, right? The problem I have with the concept that you put forward is that, again, I don't really want a card that forces me to make suboptimal decisions with my deck building, which is, we already established that ramp isn't particularly good. If I could pick up, and in fact, to your point, I would almost be looking for, does my card also have some either Sapphire or Ruby big bodies, like a Captain or something, that I might actually wheel, that would incentivize me to go all the more into ramp? Because I think you'll be able to get ramp easily. I'm not worried about ramp coming back in that opening pack. I feel like I could probably get ramp no matter what. My question is, am I going to have enough other cards to justify the ramp to put in my deck? Or am I just building an average mid-range deck with a bunch of ramp that
maybe if I get Maleficent, it pays off. So I'd be looking for like the captains or you're probably not going to get Mufasa to wield in Sapphire, but just something else that it could reasonably wheel that would justify me going into ramp in specifically Ruby Sapphire. Because if you're Monstrous Dragon, you gotta assume you're going to be Ruby Sapphire.
Yeah.
I didn't
Ruby
even give a
Amethyst.
rating. I guess that means she's like a B for me, B to C. She's got the power of an S. It's just whether it makes sense to have her.
It's just that cost,
right? Yeah. Who do we have next?
Maui Hero to All, S tier, S tier, S tier, S tier.
Agreed.
Rush.
This one feels straightforward.
A 6/5 with Rush. You don't even care about the rush because you want him swinging every turn.
Yeah.
He kills every other 5 or less drop.
Yeah.
And he will very likely survive. I think it's just Cerberus and Captain that take him out in return. Absolutely fantastic. This is Maui. He's great. What do we need to say?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I'd have him at a low S tier just because I can think of quite a few cards that I'd still want over him, but he's so efficiently costed that even for the off chance, because there is a fail state where he's just sitting on the board and can't do anything, right? But that's relatively minimal, and I'm not really worried about that to not take something that's as good as Maui is. Like, sure, I'll take that.
If Maui isn't doing something, your opponent isn't doing anything either. So
yeah, exactly, right? If he's got nothing to do, you're in a good spot, right? Yes, there's the off chance that neither of you has anything to do. In other words, he's your only character in play, and your opponent doesn't have any characters in play. But honestly, just the threat on there. Because if they're in top deck mode, yeah, they could find something bigger or equal size, but there's just as much likelihood that they find something smaller, in which case he's sitting there ready to go as soon as they exert. He's smashing into them, right? All right. I think we got another S tier here.
So I would put Mickey Brave Little Tailor in A tier.
Interesting, because I think the difference between 8 and 9 is pretty substantial in my mind. I feel like
it is definitely a difference. It's easier to get there, but he's still 8. And when we get into Steel and we talk about Maui Demigod, I'm going to say pretty similar things.
Yeah.
You can get there.
Yeah.
But you might be, unless you have the ramp, you're kind of reconciling yourself to maybe not playing cards a couple turns because you need to hold off on that ink. So you either need the draw or the ramp. He doesn't have the immediate effect that Monstrous Dragon does, but once he's on the board, he is an utter threat because he will just end the game in a turn or two.
I will say that the times I've had him played against me, I'm far more terrified of someone casting him than even Monstrous Dragon. Yeah, if I got a bomb down on the field, obviously Monstrous Dragon is more impactful. But in a usual state where I've got varying degrees of power level on the board, I'm usually more terrified of Brave Little Tailor than I am of Monstrous Dragon. And yeah, I just feel like I've gotten to 8 in a game and early enough, so much more often. I know it's not a hot take to say that 8 is easier to play than 9, but the gap between 8 and 9 for me is huge, right? So I don't know. Anyways, I got him at S. I'm very happy to take him. Still a low S for me. Like I'd take Maui over him, for example. But I'm still really happy to see him. All right, who do we got next?
Next we have Mulan Imperial Soldier. In Constructed, I've honestly been taking Mulan out of a lot of my Ruby decks.
Right.
Because she has a lot of the same problems that Mother Gothel does, and that she doesn't do something immediately.
Yeah.
She is a little cheaper, but she kind of requires you to have a large board.
Yep.
Now, if you're doing a Ruby ramp here with Sapphire, then you're probably not going to have that big of a board because you want to have been playing stuff.
Correct.
So she would rather be in like a kind of an aggro-y deck, and then she is kind of a little win more.
Yep.
But she is good in those situations. So I think I would put her at probably A, because she is still good. She's just not as good as some other things.
I think she's best suited for Amethyst Ruby. Amethyst has a lot of kind of characters that get their value early. you know, whether it's Maleficent or you know, Rafiki or something like that, that kind of do their thing and then are sitting back waiting for something, or early plays like Olaf, if you put him in there, that do their thing early and then kind of are forced to sit back, right? And especially if you happen to draft Pocket Watch and you can get Mulan with Pocket Watch, right? Then we're talking, right?
Yeah.
So I've got her at A as well, a low A, but a high A in Amethyst. Yeah. All right. Scar Shameless Firebrand. Didn't we already talk about this one and where we intend to place him?
So the only reason I wouldn't put him with the Molmen is because there was that one game, which it's up on YouTube. I think it was Jillian and got 3 of these. And 6/6 is not the worst body, but he does cost 8. He is uninkable. His on-play effect can be relevant. There are times where it is relevant, and it's probably more likely to be relevant in a draft setting, but he's still not great. So I think I would put him at D or F.
Yeah, I love how hard you just worked to convince yourself that he's reaches the heights of D or F. Just don't put him in the deck. Just don't draft him. Who do we have next?
Next up, we have Stitch Abomination, okay, so we've gone through all of these fantastic Ruby cards, Shameless Firebrand notwithstanding.
Yep.
And then we come across Stitch, who is Mufasa, who is either common or uncommon, and he's a rare. Common. So, is this like how they're trying to balance Ruby? Is they give Ruby all these gonzo overpowered cards, and then all these just
maybe
vanilla cards that are either understated or over rarityed, and it's like, what is this?
I feel like Stitch has secretly got a middle finger going on there somewhere to Ruby. It's just like how insulting that you create this card that is the exact, not even like debatably similar, the exact replica of a common in a color that isn't even known for its like impressive stats relative to cost, right? Like that steals thing, right? Like it's got the highest kind of value for cost. I guess you could say that Sapphire has typically one of the higher, along with Emerald, lore for cost. But even then, like, that's not really like a major thing for them, and yet they've got a common in that is a replica of this rare. I don't understand. Yeah. I still think it's good. Like, I thought Mufasa was good, but the fact that it's a rare is just, I don't understand.
Yeah, I would put Stitch at like B or C.
Well, I think we had Mufasa at like an A.
Please, Sapphire has ramp.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, that's a good point. But I think we also argued that we weren't necessarily going to put ramp in our draft deck. Is it because Mufasa is in a color with like no better options?
Well, like here's the thing: with Sapphire, the ramp is going to wheel. I'm going to be forced to take it anyway. Like fair. It's going to happen. So,
gosh, I hope if you do, it's all Grammatalas.
Grammatalas is so good.
Yeah, I think just the fact that you're gonna have cards you want to take over this in Ruby, where you might not in Sapphire. I think I would drop this to a B. I don't think I'd drop it to a C, but I think I would drop this to a B because you just have better options in Ruby. All right, what do we got next?
Next, we have Take On the Burning One. This is another one I don't understand. It's like this and Ruthless Pirate. I don't understand. Why is she uninkable? Like, if her being inkable, I would be much more inclined to put her into a deck. I still wouldn't put her into very many decks.
Yeah.
But she is inkable. She's got Reckless.
Yeah.
And her willpower, like, is going to die to Kronk. Like, I don't know. Like,
exactly.
What is this for? What is the purpose of this? I mean, she can take out anything other than Triton.
Specifically, she can take out Maui, which is, I think, the point of her 8 strength, is that she can take out Maui.
So what, she's going to sit there until someone plays Maui, which will not happen.
So personally, I would rather a 6/8 than an 8/6. Like,
yeah,
I think that the extra willpower at these levels of stats, I'd rather, which is funny because earlier, and I've mentioned this before, in the lower cost and the lower stats, I value strength over willpower. At this point, like at the 6 mark, pretty much, I would say, it shifts. And all of a sudden, I value willpower more because I want it to be able to hit, something twice. And to
I mean, maybe there's something
isn't.
I'm missing, and maybe I should just try putting her in a deck and seeing how she works. But just looking at her, I don't see not constructed, not draft. Like, why does this exist? Why is this a super rare?
If there was a card that existed that had no lore but also didn't have reckless, in other words, you didn't have to challenge, but you wouldn't get any benefit from not challenging, I'm still pretty sure I wouldn't like to play a 6-cost 8/6, with no lore. It's the fact that you have to challenge on top of that. So what did you have, Tekat?
F.
Yeah, not quite mole people yet, but F. All right.
No, I don't know. She has, I guess she can kill things. She doesn't cost as much as Captain Hook.
Yeah. All right. Be prepared. Board wipes in draft. I hear they might be okay.
Yeah, they're good. S tier.
Yeah. I mean, it takes a little bit of work, right? You gotta sandbag it a little bit usually, or make decisions. Like, I will say that board wipes require a little bit of thought, as opposed to bombs that you just slam down as soon as you possibly can, right? Board wipes, I think, take a little bit more thought process behind them. But if you have the capacity to plan around them, then they are incredible in a limited environment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. S. What do we got next?
Poisoned Apple. I would put Poisoned Apple at B. Okay, so constructed and draft. Draft, there's a whole bunch of princesses. There's a whole bunch of princesses that people are going to want to snag. We'll talk about a couple of those in Sapphire, but it is very likely that this is a 4-ink Dragonfire in draft. And even if there aren't princesses, you just play this, it sticks around. It's very unlikely anyone's going to remove it. And worst case scenario, you exert a newly played character and kill it.
Yeah, I mean, at worst, it is a 4-cost freeze, right?
Yeah.
But I don't really want a 4-cost freeze. And I'm not even.
You don't really want a 4-cost freeze, but
I'm not that worried about a 4-cost Dragonfire that I'm going to be picking this highly on the off chance it is a 4-cost Dragonfire. Like, don't discount the fact that...
Except it's not really going to be an off chance. There's a lot of princesses in this set. The princesses are going to get drafted a lot. You've got the Rapunzels, you've got the Bells, you've got the Auroras, you've got the Jasmines, you've got the Moanas. Like, there's
I'm
so
still
many.
waiting for you to list one that I either expect to see, which isn't a
There's
super rare
many
or legendary, or
is
that I
also
care
okay.
about.
So I care about the Auroras. I care about Rapunzel's got a big body, the big one. Like, there are targets for this.
Oh, for sure there are. It's just the bulk of them I either don't expect to see because they're super rare or legendary, or I don't really care about. The ones that are like 4 to 5 cost or 4 to 6 cost, Rapunzel, you're right, 4 to 6 cost that aren't super rare or legendary, I'd be fine to use this on. But there's probably only a small handful that I would use a Dragonfire on, for example. Where I'll give this credit is I do love the fact that it's a high initial cost and low use cost. So that if I've got a turn that I'm basically going to take off otherwise, I can just dump this out. And then it's only going to cost me 1 ink when I actually want to use it. So I will give you that. I'm just not sure that there's enough scenarios where I'm happy to have this take a spot in my deck. Because, for example, like I'm thinking of Aurora, the 2/5. Her effect's already used by the time she's in play, at which point she's a 2/5, which I'd still want to get rid of, but I'm not like anxiously trying to put a card in my deck to get rid of her.
Like this is, but this is. I think I did see where you're going to go with this, but like again, like this, that's what I'm putting in a B. It's removal. It's not the best removal, but it's removal.
So versus the next one, I will include this in my deck. So I'm gonna, I've got this at like C to D because I'll include it in my deck because worst case scenario it's a bad freeze. And you're right, there's enough princesses that it's not likely to be unusable. But I'm certainly not picking this highly at all. Like, it's probably like low C for me. Like, I want to wield this in like the last 2 picks of the pack type thing.
Yeah.
So we're far apart on this.
Speaking of next,
Cole's notes.
Yeah.
We're far apart on this one.
Speaking of this one, Sword of Truth, I think I would also put as like a B, maybe a C, because there's a lot of villains in the set. People are going to be playing villains a lot, and it's removal. I would absolutely pick Dragonfire over this, but it's removal.
You're going to have to get back to me if you ever find a use for this. That you are actually
villains.
excited about.
There's a whole bunch of them. And, okay, I'm not saying you have to be excited about it, but it's removal.
Do we have the option of searching by keyword yet on... Yes, villain.
Okay. Let me just... There's 2 villains in Amber. You're going to see one of them. You're going to see Lord of the Underworld. There's 3 Dr. Faciliers. There's 2 Jafars.
I'm just looking for sheer number.
The
sheer
Queen.
quantity.
There's Ursula.
Actually, I'm going to look for quantity that's not super rare or legendary. Okay. Rarity, common, uncommon, rare. I will accept those. There are 24 in the set. So 24 in the set that are rare or less, of which we're not expecting to see Hades, King of Olympus. Who else are we not expecting to see? We don't want to use this on Maleficent. Here, I'm even going to get rid of the 1s and 2s because we don't want to use it on those. So that brings us down to 17, of which we don't want Hades, King of Olympus. I'm going to fight you on this one, of which we don't want Scar, Shameless Firebrand. We don't want Captain Hook. We don't want Lady Tremaine. And we probably don't want Captain the Jolly Roger. So that brings it down to 12 villains.
Here's the thing. If those cards are in draft, someone's still probably going to play it. This is going to see use. It's going to kill something. It might sit on the board for a couple turns, or it might sit on your hand in a couple turns, but it is removal. If drafting Magic the Gathering has taught me anything, it's that removal is good even if it's bad.
If you're drafting niche removal, as in it only targets a certain creature type in Magic the Gathering,
and again,
that's
why it's B, okay? This is worlds better than Moana Chosen by the Ocean, but there's a lot of villain characters.
See, I've got this with the mole people.
It will very likely be a target.
Because
even
Poison
if
Apple has a fail state of
Wesselton.
freeze, right? This doesn't have a fail state and it's non-inkable. So,
but there are more villains than princesses, and that is my argument. There is a lot of villains.
There?
Even if this only hits Duke of Wesselton, like, sure, fine. I will pay 4 to
if you pay 4 to get rid of Duke of Wesselton.
In draft, I will pay 4 to get rid of Duke of Wesselton. I will not be happy about it, but I will do it. And that's why this is a B.
I've got it with the mole people. All right.
I don't think it deserves the moment.
Thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that. I got to hear your comments, by the way. I got to get some comments here on these last 2 because these last 2 were fiery. We got to hear the consensus. Anyways. We're on to Sapphire Rare Plus. So the first one we got is Aerial Who's-It Collector. What do you think?
Look at this stuff. Isn't it neat? I wish I had a better card. You can absolutely try to build a constructed deck around Ariel, who's a collector. I've tried a couple times. I don't think the support is there for her yet. In draft, she's a 3/3/1 lore for 4 that you may activate once.
Yep.
You're not drafting that many items. All the items are trash, and if you're just getting items for her, you're gonna lose.
You're just filling your deck with a bunch of unusable stuff. So F?
Yep.
Okay.
F, yes.
What do we got next?
Aurora Dreaming Guardian, S tier, has to be. Giving war to everything else is really good. Even with actions being less common, they're still out there. And you can also shift her onto Regal Princess, who is an uncommon. You will very likely snag a couple of her. Getting out a 3/5/2 lore on turn 3 that can sing, quest, or challenge is insane. It's insane in constructed. It's insane in draft.
It's amazing how many times I've had people shift this on turn 3 and then not do much with her. Like, and I'm talking about the operator. I'm not talking about the card right now. But she seems to be the one that messes people up most because they feel like they got to leave her at home or something. Like if you got a 3/5/2 lore,
No, quest her.
haste on turn
Like,
3.
Yeah,
I'll
at
be
least
honest,
quest.
I'm very hesitant to shift her just because I don't love it. Obviously, on turn 3, I would absolutely shift her. After turn 3, I probably wouldn't.
Oh yeah, she
just
only
'cause I
costs
don't love
5. She's a real cheap Floodborn.
Yeah.
So at that much, play her.
I've actually got her at B.
Really?
Maybe I'm not being generous enough for Ward, but just because there's so little removal, Ward doesn't factor in as much for me. It's still relevant. Like, don't get me wrong. There's going to be removal out there. Why I like her Ward better than others is because her Ward actually makes more sense to me protecting your other characters. Because I'm thinking of, like, Fire the Cannons and stuff like that, right? That's going to pick off my smaller characters. Her having Ward is less interesting to me because they'd have to use a 5 cost or more card to get rid of her anyway. So that's a parity ink trade for me. So I'm happy for them to use Dragonfire on her. I like her Ward protecting other characters. So I actually value her Ward over other wards. So maybe it should be an A, but I've still got her at B. I'm kind of on the fence about her.
Yeah. Just the fact that she can shift down turn 3 elevates her enough to S for me.
Which is not unheard of, right? Like, Regal Princess is going to go around pretty late. And, you know, it's not unheard of for that to happen. I'm just thinking that I'm not counting on that. And I want to try and factor her in on her merits alone without the kind of ideal scenario, which is going to happen enough times. But I'm not expecting to happen a ton. So, I don't know. Anyways. Who do we have next? Belle, right?
Belle,
Strange
but special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was actually, that was a genuine question that time. It was like, who are we on next?
I'm torn between putting her into B or A because if you can get to 10 ink, 5 lore is amazing. But like, you really do need to build around her. And if you are in Sapphire, you do have the other ramp tools. But we already talked about how hard it is just to get to 9. Getting to 10. She's great in Constructed, where you can much more easily get that high. In Draft, you're going to have a tougher time of it. She does provide a bit of ramp for herself, but unlike a lot of the other forms of Sapphire ramp, it's from your hand, not your deck.
Exactly, which means you're burning through your resources, right? So as opposed to, you know, what we were talking about in Ruby, where you might want to be in a Ruby Sapphire deck, that's one of the times you might want to incorporate ramp. You can't really use her in a Ruby Sapphire deck because there isn't enough card draw to account for the resources you burn through. So I think it's a pipe dream to, you know, it's a bit of a meme, I think, to expect to get to 10 with her in a situation where she's not the only card in play because you've used all your other cards to get to 10 ink. So I've actually got her at a D because I think that more often than not, she's just a 4-cost 2/4/1.
I think I'll settle on a B for her just because, like, if you pair with Amethyst, you might be able to draw enough to
potentially
offset that.
like if you're
and then you
going
can
hardcore on Maleficent and Friends, I could see that, right? Yeah. Again, maybe asterisk D. If you're an Amethyst and you've got a lot of card draw, then because like you said, 5 lore is ridiculous if you can make it work. And she is inkable, as opposed to a lot of other kind of quote-unquote bombs, which she can be in the right circumstance. She is inkable. So, right, if your situation doesn't set up, then worst case scenario, she's ink, right? So, I'd say asterisk D if you think that there's a chance you can get it off without just completely burning your house down. All right. So Hades' Infernal Schemer.
I think he is another one of those S+++++.
Yeah,
people are figuring out how good he is in Constructed. He is ridiculous. He's this sweet spot between Genie on the Job and Maleficent Monsters Dragon, where Genie's cheaper, but you still have the resource to play again. Maleficent is more expensive and gets rid of it entirely, whereas Hades is just that the right stats, cost, and what he does is ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. He would be one of my top picks. Yeah, a really solid body. On again, we talked about how infrequent removal is. A really solid body and removal for 7, which is a very achievable number. I think 6 is the sweet spot for me. That I'm expecting to get to 6 pretty much every game. 7, I think, is also relatively frequent. And obviously, knowing you've got Hades, you're going to push to 7.
Yeah, if you skip your 1-drop, then you will naturally get to 7.
Yep.
So that is a thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, especially if you're not being pressured, right? If you're going second and they don't have a 1-drop, consider skipping your 1-drop, just knowing that you got Hades in the deck, right? Because even if, I talk about how don't count on getting any 1 card on any given game, right? Getting to 7, even if you don't draw Hades, isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? You can maybe play a couple things in a turn and stuff like that. Awesome. Yeah. One of the best. Who do we have next, sir?
Next we have Jasmine, Queen of Agrabah. I think I'd put her at a B. So I haven't seen her played much, but just when she's played and when she quests, she heals everyone by 2.
Yeah.
So you challenge out, you take some damage, you get favorable trades, but you're still damaged. You drop her, and then everything is all better.
Yeah. So we already talked about how healing isn't great, but I think that's in a situation where you're kind of relying on the healing to be the thing, right? Yeah. She's already reasonably solid. She's not good, but she's reasonably solid without even the healing, right? I'm not counting the shift because, am I going to shift on Jasmine Disguised and get a slightly better body? No. I'm counting her as a 5-cost Inkable 2/5 2 lore. That alone's passable in a deck. And then you have both a comes into play and quest trigger to heal everything. Yeah. I've got her at an A because I think that although we talked about healing, you're never going to line up the perfect healing time. You don't need to line it up with her. She's going to work no matter what, right? Yeah. And if you can build around her, which I probably wouldn't recommend an Amber Sapphire draft build, but maybe Amber Steel, or sorry, Sapphire Steel with bodyguards. That would be something else. So I think she's good enough on her own, and then combined with like steel bodyguards, I'd be really, really happy with her. Yeah. All right. I can't remember whose turn. Why don't you go ahead, Sarah? It doesn't really matter.
Sure. Maleficent Uninvited is S tier. I managed to draft her with just in time, and I managed to get her out with that at least once. Insane.
Disgusting.
I know I'm a horrible person, but it was like
as I just besmirched Amber Sapphire draft, but in that situation, that's disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely. No, she I think is the best statted for her cost 3 ink character. She just is. She's got 3 willpower on Hans. She only loses 1 willpower to Mufasa and Stitch. She's great.
Yeah,
she is the perfect vanilla 5-drop.
Oh yeah. See, at that's kind of lore, I don't even consider them vanilla, right? Because yes, they don't have any other text on them, but they are serving a very niche purpose, which is huge lore battery, right? So I tend to relegate the term, for me, at least internally, and I haven't really spoken of this much, but for me, internally, I'm thinking of vanillas as the things that I'm not really using them for any niche purpose other than a body. For her, she is doing something substantial. So I think calling her a vanilla is kind of, unfair to what she accomplishes on the board.
Yeah,
she's awesome.
Very good.
Yep. I would put her not as the highest S tier like a Hades, but as a high S tier.
Oh,
absolutely.
Maurice. Not nearly as good. Maurice, world famous inventor. In draft, put him with the mole people.
Yeah, agreed. I tried to make him work one time, man. I tried. It was awful. It was a train wreck.
He costs 6.
He's got $7, but otherwise,
like trying to make him work in constructed is already hard enough because you have to ramp out the ass. You are not going to get there
Yep.
soon enough to do anything, and then he's just a 2/7.
Yep.
And maybe you have one item. Like,
Yeah. Maybe everyone. The fact of the matter is, even like a 6-cost 2/7 2 lore draw 1 card I would be happy with, but I wouldn't rate particularly highly.
Draw 1 card next turn when you
right?
play something
Exactly.
else.
Next turn, yeah, even more so, right? And the chances of that actually happening are relatively low unless you stack your deck with awful items. So, yeah, I agree. Mole people, it is. Robin Hood, Unrivaled Archer. Where do you have him?
I would say solid A. Evasives can be really annoying. He can get rid of them.
Yeah.
And in certain cases, he can draw you a card. And for all of that, he's got a decent body.
Yeah. I mean, so the problem I have is that both the evasive and the card draw, and I know you didn't mention the card draw, so it sounds like you're not even factoring that in.
No, I did. I did mention the card draw.
Oh, okay. Both of those abilities seem like relative pipe dreams for me, that they're going to be relevant, especially the card draw, right? Statistically, what are the likelihood that you are going to be lower hands than your opponent in a format where you tend to be drawn off the top of your deck a lot? So most of the time you're just both at 0.
If you're in Sapphire trying to ramp out, it's honestly likelier you'll have less in hand than your opponent.
Correct, but again, I'm not looking to ramp, right? So
if I'm in Sapphire, I'm ramping because there's all these common.
You're just assuming that you're going to ramp
that no one else is taking, that I'm going to have to take. So if I'm in Sapphire,
you're not going to have to take. You got your second color. I'm working under the assumption
to me. Someone's going to hand me.
I'm working under the assumption that I'm not trying to ramp in my deck, right? Mm-hmm. So yes, obviously, if you're ramping, that the likelihood of that ability goes up.
Here's the thing: if I am in Sapphire, I need to ramp because otherwise, why am I in Sapphire? I
think we agree you shouldn't be in Sapphire anyway, unless you pick Hades, right?
But here's the thing: is there are these good bombs in Sapphire, but you then need to start trying to get the ramp package in there as well.
Yeah,
and I think in that context.
So again, let me just backtrack here a little bit. I at least am trying not to be in ramp if I can help it, and if I'm not, I'm assuming that the card draws, maybe like a 20% chance that I'm getting that off, maybe. Probably less than that. Again, I'm not a huge statistics person, so feel free to come at me because I deserve it, but know that I'm not assuming I know what I'm talking about there. The evasive though, yes, there's lots of common evasives, but again, I'm assuming that I have to be paired against Ruby or Emerald for it really to be relevant. I'm not really factoring in Jetsam as all that relevant all the time in Amethyst. So I pretty much got to assume that I'm going to be paired against Ruby and Emerald, and I don't think that's necessarily a safe assumption, right? That's only 1/3 of the potential card colors, and that's.
I think it's high enough. I think it's high enough because, again, Pongo and Goofy are commons. They are commons.
Yeah.
Tinkerbell and Peter Pan are commons. You are playing in an 8-person pod. There's going to be people with evasives. And I like,
but that's assuming you get paired against them. Even in an 8-person pod, you're only getting paired against. Assuming.
Okay. You're getting mired in the statistics, and I'm like they're.
Yeah, I'm going to nitpick that much. So anyway, all this kind of culminating in the fact that for me he's a C because I still want him in the deck because I think fail state of a 6-cost inkable 4/4 lore is not awful, but
I think you're getting the at least halfway, if not best case scenario, often enough that he is A tier for me.
Yeah. Anyways, maybe. Scar Mastermind.
I think he's another A for me. That -5 strength on something, I usually don't expect it, and you get a free trade out of it. And your opponent's probably not going to expect it because you don't see it as often. Yeah. And this is easily the best Scar.
Yes, I agree on that. And this is where I'm going to admit to my biases, which is I've played him enough times where I'm just holding him and hoping that his ability comes in relevant at some point in time. But I'd be happier with Aurora because really I just need the -2 strength. and using the -5 is kind of superfluous. I've had plenty of times where it's been used against me where it's been irrelevant. So
And I've had times where it's been used against me where it's been very
where it's
relevant.
crushing, absolutely, right?
Yeah.
It's been frequent enough that it makes me a little bit nervous about him. I'm not rating him much lower than you. I've got him as like a high B, low A, because I don't think you can possibly expect it, because I think most people are probably going to be aligned with your thoughts and picking him higher. So I don't think you can expect to get him much lower than that. But it makes me nervous. All right, I'm going to let you pronounce the next one because you're so good at these pronunciations.
Tamatoa, so shiny. Put him with the mole man. Like, he costs 8. He cares about items. You're not going to run items.
Yep.
Mole man.
He is probably an 8-5-8-1. Like, assume that he has one more. Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed. And next one as well? If it's not...
I think of all the cards in this entire set, I think if it's not Baroque, is below the Mole Man. Like, you can't justify.
I'm not going to have enough space on my rating chart. There can't be below the Mole Man.
Yeah, whatever the bottomest rung is, if it's not Baroque, is like just under that.
Okay. Let's get back to a good card. Let It Go.
Let It Go, S tier. Let It Go is a reason to go into Sapphire.
Yeah, I've got it at S tier as well. I'll be honest, I've got it at low S tier just because adding the ink has always concerned me. It has proven to be so much better than I thought it was going to be, even with adding the ink. So I have to mark it as an S tier, but it does make me a little nervous giving my opponent extra resources. But it's still S tier.
Yeah, it's great.
All right. Last but not least, what do we got as the final item here?
But not least, Fishbone Quill. There has been so much chatter about this card. Oh, it's such a good ramp card. Oh, it lets you ink your uninkables. I don't care. It costs 3 and usually does nothing. This is an F tier card.
Yep, agreed. I said not least because if it's not Baroque, it's in set.
Yeah, if it's not Baroque, is worse. It does less.
That expression still applies. It is not the least. Awesome. All right. Let us know if you agree, if you've done any drafting or anticipate or have any background in drafting, what your thoughts are on these, where you're taking Scar. Comment down below.
Scar's good.
All right. Steel Rare Plus. What do we got first?
Yes. At first is Captain Hook, Captain of the Jolly Roger, who I think is a conditional A. If you've grabbed at least 2 Fire the Cannons, I'd say this is a snap pick. You need him.
Yes.
If you haven't seen any Fire the Cannons, he is trash garbage and avoid him.
So I actually went to the extent of like mapping out for myself where would I take this. My thought process is he's an A with 3+ Fire the Cannons. He's a B with 2, and he's a D with 1. And he's an F without any. Cool.
Yeah, I mean,
yep.
We don't need to keep talking.
Captain Hook thinking a happy thought.
B. So Forceful Duelist is a common, so you're pretty likely to get a couple of those. And shifting him out on turn 3, like this is the same deal with Dreaming Guardian. He's pretty sweet. He can kill basically anything. He's gonna survive because he can't be retaliated against. He does only have 1 lore, which is what puts him at a B for me.
Yep.
And he is uninkable, but he's fine.
Yeah. I've got him at a C, but I was thinking he should probably be higher just because I think he's I don't factor in his third ability, I guess, Stolen Dust, that often in Constructed, but I think in Draft, when people are going wider and keeping smaller characters in play, I think it becomes a lot more relevant. So he should probably be a B. I think you're right.
Yeah.
I'm amending my rating. Gantu's D? F?
He's got to be F. F or mole people. Like, I'll put him in F.
Yeah.
Like, so much has been said about how trash this card is, and even in Draft, like, I would rather have Maui.
Yeah.
We'll get to him, but I'd so much rather have Maui.
So the next one, I think I have to amend. I had Hans 13th in line at A, but I think he might be an S.
He is S, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um,
I've been playing
Hans
with him more,
makes
and
you
now
wanna
I'm
go to
like,
steal.
yeah, you know what? He's pretty good.
He's real good. He's real good.
I mean, I think
He
on
is
his
the better
own he's
Hans.
not, right? I mean, on his own he's still good, but I don't think he's real good on his own. But I think with any combination of Fire the Cannons, Smash, Bodyguards, like anything that can put on some damage such that one more is going to be like a really good effect.
Oh yeah.
Compare him to our last rare, and we'll get there. He's so good. Yeah. Okay. What's our next one?
Next up is Maui Demigod. I was already talking about this with Gantu. I would put him at a B because again, like sort of same deal with Brave Little Tailor. If you can get to 8 ink, once he's on the board, he's fantastic. He'll kill anything. He quests for 3, so you usually don't need to challenge because people will try to get rid of him. But it's the process of getting to him. So I would say B.
The 8 for what he does is kind of the challenge for me. I've got him at C just because, as opposed to like Mickey, Brave Little Tailor, or Monstrous Dragon that we talked about in Ruby, like they're so good that you want to push for their ink. He is well statted for 8, but he's not so good to me that I want to like hardcore push for 8. So I'm happy to have him in the deck because he's inkable worst case scenario. But I've drafted him often enough now at this point that he hasn't really impressed me all that much. So I've got him at C. Who do we have next?
Next we have the Mouseketeer, who I would put at D. He's the most expensive bodyguard, and his other ability is almost never relevant.
Ignore it. Yeah.
Just ignore it.
Yeah.
He is too lore, but he's a bodyguard. Like,
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
D.
Yeah, I think that I think you're just so much happier with the amber bodyguards and the cheaper steel bodyguards. I would still put him in the deck, which is your rating aligns with that.
Yeah.
But I'm certainly not going out of my way for it. Simba Return King, I feel a lot better about in the compared to Robin Hood in terms of the anti-evasive package. Where are you at with Simba?
With Simba, I would honestly put him at a C, though a high C.
So we're just trading places between Robin Hood and
This is the
Simba.
thing. So Robin Hood costs 1 less.
Yeah.
Robin Hood potentially draws me a card. Simba is just 7 ink is just so much higher than 6 ink. And I have had games where I'm just like, I really want to play Simba, but that means I don't play a card this turn. So it's either I ink Simba and I play the other card, or I ink the other card and do nothing so I can play Simba next turn. And I hate that. So that's why Simba is a C for me.
Yeah, I've got him at a B because I'm happy enough with his body without the evasive. So the evasive is gravy for me, whereas Robin Hood, I'm kind of relying on the evasive being relevant for him to feel playable to me, or good at least. So I'm a little bit happier with Simba. I'm still not excited. I still want him on the lower end of the pack, but I've got him at B. This one, the next one, I feel a lot better about in draft than I do in constructed. I'm still on the fence in constructed. I should say on the fence relative to what it seems like everyone feels about.
Yeah, so Take-Ka Heartless, I think, is a solid, potentially high A. Yep. You can get to 6 pretty easily.
Yep.
The one thing that takes her down for me is she doesn't do anything the turn she's played.
Yes.
And if we're comparing her to Heroic Outlaw, I would absolutely rather have Heroic Outlaw, but she's still good. She's very good.
I mean, Heroic Outlaw also doesn't do anything the turn is played, but Heroic Outlaw nets you a 4 lore difference versus 2. So that's
you can potentially rush out Heroic Outlaw too. So there's that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm of the same mind and the same comparison. Next, we've got Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, which feels like another one of those reason to be in the color cards.
Yeah, she's S. You're very likely going to get a Tiny Tactician. She's just fantastic. She is so much removal on a stick.
Yeah. Nice. A whole new world, on the other hand, unless you're crazy and want to do some kind of mill strategy.
Yeah, like...
Are you crazy, Wero, and wanting to do some kind of mill strategy?
Not really, but like people are so hyped and hopped up on this card in Constructed. I think it's in Constructed, it's really only worth it if you sing it because your opponent gets to make use of the fresh hand before you do.
We've established we're
Otherwise,
not getting to 10, 12 ink in this game. So
yeah, and in Draft,
I've got it as an
this
F,
is,
quite frankly.
Yeah, I think this is an F. It's a trap.
Yep.
Because...
And I like it in Constructed, but I think it's
in Steel, you have Beast Mirror at common.
Yep.
There's also Ransack if for some reason you want to ransack.
Oh.
So you're probably getting through your deck a little faster than your opponent anyway.
Yep.
So a whole new world, not only is it helping your opponent, it's probably going to take you closer to decking out.
Yep. Next, we got Grab Your Sword.
S plus 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 plus.
Plus, plus, plus. Yeah. Yeah.
As many of these will fit in my deck.
Right? Oh, it has wrecked me so bad in Draft. We've already established that you're going a little bit lower to the ground, a little bit wider in Draft than normal. And this wrecks that. What do we got next?
Yes. Next up, we have the Musketeer Tabard, who D or an F.
So I will say with an asterisk, if I have like 6 or 7 bodyguards at that point,
then you want to grab it. It's conditional.
Yeah, conditional like C.
You're not taking this in your first pack. Absolutely not.
No, please don't. Because I've had games where I was drafting Steel and I wanted to draft bodyguards and I still didn't see them. So even though you got commons and uncommons, it still don't count on it.
Yeah.
All right. Where are you at with Plasma Blaster? Because I got
with Plasma Blaster. I have never played with this card. I kind of want to because so recently I had a Constructed game where someone was using Shield of Virtue against me, and like it actually did a surprising amount, as I kind of thought it would, because it's an ink sink. It gives you something to do if you don't have cards in your hand, even though it's higher than you would normally expect for that value. I think Plasma Blaster is going to be a similar situation. It's essentially a Hans 13th in line that is not a character, so it's less likely to die. It is expensive, but if you're in Draft, your ink curve probably isn't as good. It's probably lower. So I think, honestly, Plasma Blaster is a solid B for me.
If this was a 1-cost effect, because you so more frequently have 1 available, and again, I know it's not a hot take to say it's cheaper to pay 1 than 2, but the frequency of having 1 spare ink versus having 2 is substantial. If this was 1 cost to activate, I'd probably have it at an A, but I've got it at a D because I'll put it in the deck, but I'm not happy about it.
And that's what I'll put it as a B. I want to play with this thing. I want to play with it more and see if it's any good.
You come back and tell us. Come back to the comments whenever you get this in the deck and tell us how it works.
I mean, I kind of want to do that with take Burning One too. Just be like, why does this card exist?
Wero, you've been great. This is the end. We've gotten through it all. Any final parting words for the people? Tell them what you do. Tell them where to find you.
I want every single person who watches this video to get a cardboard sign and pick it outside of Ravensburger's offices in Seattle until they make 15 card draft packs. I need draft boosters. Yes, give me draft.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you next time. Cheers.
Thank you everyone for watching. It's truly an honor to see you enjoying our videos. Thank you to Lorcana.com for having us as one of their featured creators, and thank you to the amazing community coming together around this incredible game. Please like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments what you'd like to see on our next video. Until next time, if you'd like to continue with us on this journey, please be our guest.